into the backyard!
And now, my name is Hunter.
My name is Tyler.
My name is Jack.
And welcome to our presentation. Andrew Jackson emerged from the War of 1812 as a very popular conflict hero. He soon entered the political arena and analyzed present framework for democracy. Jackson challenged the Democratic Republicans in their expanding power. He believed that the party's authentic mission to prevent the energy of the federal authorities and maintain the rights of states and individuals was being misplaced in the country's growth. Instead of helping individuals, states, and agricultural pursuits, Jackson believed the Democratic Republicans have been turning into more centered towards industrial progress, expanding federal power, and the upper class.
The aggressive assignment Jackson lodged into opposition to the Democratic Republicans ended the era of good feelings, countrywide harmony, and again, the U.S. entered a two-party system. Jackson and his supporters shared a political philosophy later referred to as Jacksonian Democracy. It set out for an enhanced presidency and government branch and a weaker Congress. Out of respect for the common man, it additionally wanted to expand public participation in government, so it extended vote-casting rights to encompass all white males, now not just landowners.
The implementation of general male suffrage by way of state legislatures dramatically improved the wide variety of voters in the United States. The number of voters in the presidential election of 1824 was approximately 350,000. With the push led by Jackson and his supporters for the growth of voter eligibility, 2.4 million Americans participated in the 1840 presidential election. Most of the new voters had been from the lower classes, which had in the past been restricted from voting due to property requirements. These common men tended to aid Andrew Jackson, and their movement coalesced into a new political party, the Democratic Party.
The old Democratic-Republican Party also transitioned at about the identical time into the Whig Party. The Whig Party tended to choose industrial expansion and was supported in particular by way of the upper classes. The United States was once more divided between two robust political events with very specific views and goals for governing.
Another principle of the Jacksonian democracy is that politicians were allowed to appoint their followers to authoritative jobs as a way of limiting the power of elite groups. This technique grew to be known as the spoils system. Jackson believed that the president had to make the choice of branch employees so that they were carrying out the work of the president according to the plans of the party in power. Therefore, he believed these authoritative jobs of necessity must be held by way of only people who had demonstrated their loyalty to the party by working in campaigns.
The new spoils device he carried out occasionally led to corruption and unqualified people in authoritative positions. Jacksonian democracy also preferred limiting the strength of the federal authorities in favor of improved state power. This problem of states' rights was once a very divisive problem in the course of the early 19th century. The thought of states' rights revolved around who held the supreme power of authorities, states or the federal government. The root of the argument grew to become constant in the constitutional debates between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists all through the ratification process.
The issue reemerged in 1798 with the passage of the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, which opposed the legality of the Alien and Sedition Acts. The difficulty of whether states ought to nullify federal regulation nearly cut up the United States. Congress had surpassed the tariffs of 1828 and 1832 to protect American manufacturers from competition with low-priced British imported goods. Southerners believed that the tariff was used to purposely hurt Southern plantation owners and would only benefit Northern industrialists.
In response, South Carolina's legislators nullified the tariff. Andrew Jackson's vice president, John C. Calhoun, argued with the president about the states' rights to nullify federal legal guidelines they opposed. Calhoun, of South Carolina, resigned from the vice president to lead the efforts of the southern states in the crisis. He even went to some distance as to endorse South Carolina's secession from the Union. Calhoun's loyalty to the interests of the southern region of the United States rather than the United States as a whole made it clear how divided the nation had become.
The nullification crisis was resolved when the compromise tariff was passed and Jackson's congressional supporters authorized the president to use the military and navy to enforce federal law. South Carolina then backed down from its secessionist threats. The Jacksonian democracy that purported to uphold states' rights placed a restriction when it threatened the Union as a whole.
While most tribes resented the policy, they reluctantly complied. However, a few tribes, such as the Cherokee Nation in Georgia, refused to supply their land to the state. Georgia had surpassed a statute that abolished the Cherokee authorities and laws in the eyes of the state. The nation was planning to use this provision to manage Cherokee lands that had been granted to them by the means of a 1791 treaty with the United States government.
The issue in Georgia used to be noticeably charged given that gold had been found in the northern part of the state. The Georgia lands intrigued white settlers during the gold rush of the 1830s was in general held by the Cherokee Indians. The Cherokee would not let the loss of their land happen. The case was heard by the United States Supreme Court, and Chief Justice John Marshall issued the ruling for the Worcester v. Georgia. In this 1832 decision, Marshall sided with the Cherokee Indians and stated that the state of Georgia had no authority to legislate against the tribe.
After the Supreme Court issued the ruling, President Andrew Jackson brazenly challenged John Marshall in the decision. Jackson stated, "John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it." In 1835, the Georgia Cherokee reluctantly surrendered their lands. Over the subsequent few years, the Cherokees have been compelled to tour the West over what grew to be the Trail of Tears. The compelled removal was tough, and heaps of American Indians died alongside the way due to starvation, disease, and exhaustion.
Jacksonian Democracy is a time period that refers to more than 8 years that Andrew Jackson served as president. It is more of a widespread term that encompasses the formation of the Democratic Party, the Jackson presidency, and the broad political reforms that prolonged political participation to the common man over the path of the 1830s through the 1850s. Not all corporations had been protected in the Jacksonian Democracy movement. Although the newly established male suffrage was accomplished through the merchandising of Jacksonian Democracy, American Indians, enslaved and free blacks, and women did not benefit from the egalitarian values of the time period.
The end.